How many times you've ever let somebody slide and they just get to slipping and sliding, and now at this point they're trying to build a snowman. Don't let nobody play with you. Again, you're going to hear me keep saying, don't let nobody play with you. I want you to, every time somebody's starting to play with you, I want you to hear my voice. Don't let nobody do that. Stop. But how many times have you said like, oh, it's not that big of a deal, or oh, they probably didn't mean it like that, or oh, this is my mom, so no, she's nothing. They're nothing. Stop letting people play with you. That's a boundary. Don't let nobody little boy you, little girl you, child you. We're not that no more. We're not that. Set that early and establish that even for yourself. Because when you snap and now you're the bad guy and you get the worst of it and you get the whooping, now everybody's looking at you like, oh, look at this crash out. No. But nobody ever plays into like what they did to you or what brought you there. But establishing that boundary will let you know that nobody is able to play with you like that. You're not even able to lose yourself in the form of a crash out because
so we're diving into Spill It with Meesh today. And from what I've seen, this isn't like your typical, surface level stuff. Right. But this seems to be about those real conversations. You know what I mean? Like unfiltered conversations about growth and healing and building connections. And it seems to be really targeted towards urban communities.
Yeah, and you sent over a bunch of different sources like YouTube transcripts and stuff from Spotify and even her link tree.
Yeah.
So it seems like we're going to get like a really well-rounded view of this whole thing.
Yeah, and that's what we're aiming for today. We want to give you a good picture of what sparked this whole Spill It with Meesh platform and, the major things that she focuses on, things like mental health and entrepreneurship and just overall well-being.
Right.
And then the community that she's building around all of this. And we're going to pull out some specific moments and guests from her content to kind of give you a better idea of what this is all about and why it might be connecting with so many people.
Yeah. Okay.
So, I guess the first question is, where did Spill It with Meesh even come from?
Well, it looks like it started pretty organically, almost like a personal thing.
Uh-huh.
At least that's what it seems like from this first episode. Let's go.
Right.
The transcript you sent over.
Yeah.
She mentions that it was initially a hobby and then it kind of took a big leap forward when she joined this Nevada Capital Readiness business program.
Yeah.
So it seems like that really helped her kind of, take it to the next level.
Yeah. There's this phrase she uses, this unhinged safe place.
Yes.
That really kind of grabs your attention. It feels like it's a place where people can just let go of all those, pretenses and just talk about anything and everything.
Right.
And she even lists all these different things that she's interested in, like investing, property, stock, crypto, health and wellness, mental health, self-growth. Yeah. And it's like, how do you even put all that together?
Right. Well, her focus on mental health and self-growth seems to be a constant theme.
Yeah.
And if you look at her motivation for all of this,
yeah,
it really comes down to her own personal journey.
Right.
And wanting to make it a safe space for other people to kind of go through their own journey.
Uh-huh.
That willingness to be vulnerable and connect through that shared experience really seems like the core of Spill It with Meesh.
Definitely. And, it's almost endearing to hear about those early technical difficulties she had, like the deleted SD card with her niece's birthday and,
right.
Struggling with the new sound equipment.
Yes.
I mean, it shows that she's just a real person, just going for it. Not everything's perfect.
I think that makes her even more relatable.
Yeah, yeah.
When you're not trying to be super polished and perfect.
Right.
And even something like the drink of the episode, starting with that risotto.
Right.
I mean, she even mentions that's what they serve at Olive Garden. Just like a very casual, laid-back vibe.
It really is. And it's not just about that, kind of casual feel. She also drops in some really, key insights. Even in that first episode, the whole thing about believing in what you're doing and putting in the effort and actually having fun while you're doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, that applies to anything you're trying to do.
Definitely.
Not just building a platform, but any goal you have in life.
And the fact that you have to believe in yourself first.
Yeah.
Before you can expect other people to believe in you.
Yeah.
That's so powerful for anyone putting themselves out there.
Right. And it wasn't like she just, blew up overnight.
Right.
She talks about how she was trying different things on Instagram and it wasn't perfect and she had to adapt and, try and fail and try again.
Right.
She even mentions using ChatGPT and getting help from her best friend and the Nevada Capital Readiness team.
Yeah.
So resourceful.
I think that's such good advice, to not be afraid to ask what you might think are stupid questions.
Right.
And, tap into your network for support. Everyone goes through that learning curve.
Definitely. And she also talks about networking and kind of like speaking your goals into existence. That whole manifestation thing.
It's interesting how she mixes like the practical business stuff
Yeah.
with this more, mindset and belief thing.
How do you think that resonates with her audience?
I think it gives them both. Like,
Yeah.
okay, here's what you actually do, but then also believe that it's possible.
Yeah.
And I really liked her point about how sometimes it's not even about money.
Mm-hmm.
It's just about being tired of something.
Totally.
And that becomes the motivation you need to change.
Yeah. And then she gets into shadow work.
Yeah.
Which is pretty intense for so early on.
Yeah. But it shows how committed she is to like really going deep.
Right.
And she's honest about it.
Yeah.
It's not all sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah.
There are setbacks.
Yeah.
And you have to be patient with yourself.
Right.
It's a more realistic view of self-improvement.
And her thing about self-control, not letting negative people, drag you down.
Right.
That's so hard these days with social media and everything.
It is. And instead of getting caught up in negativity, she suggests trying empathy instead. Like just asking someone, how are you today?
Right.
It's a good reminder that sometimes conflict comes from just misunderstanding each other.
Yeah. And, she talks about living in a very scary time.
Yeah,
So that inner work becomes even more important.
it does.
It's about building that resilience,
Yeah.
and finding that inner peace when everything around you is uncertain. And she talks about shifting her focus to long-term sustainability.
Yeah.
Happiness, health, mental clarity, actually living.
Yeah.
She's got this really mature understanding of well-being.
It seems like it.
Then she talks about her family and how she's always been the healer and the nurturer.
Yeah.
But she also sets boundaries. She realizes that people have to want to help themselves. She even uses that phrase, you can lead a horse to water.
Right.
Which is so true.
It is. And then she touches on this whole transformative journey of self-discovery. How her image has changed and her spirituality and even the things she's interested in and attracted to. It's like she's constantly evolving.
And she admits that it's easy to fall back into old patterns.
Right.
So staying committed is key and not letting negativity get to you. Just own your journey.
It's a powerful message.
It is. And she talks about wanting to bring in special guests and local businesses and do events.
Yeah.
So it's not just online. She's building a real community.
And you can tell how grateful she is for the support she's already gotten.
Uh-huh.
And her vision for the platform. She wants it to be grand.
Yeah.
She sees the potential because of her network and her resources.
And she wants to use that to help others.
Yeah, especially small Black business owners.
Right. And that comment she made about how we'll never really be our own bosses.
Oh, yeah.
Because we're always serving someone, whether it's our audience or our customers.
It's a good point.
Yeah. And she talks about the importance of being humble and being willing to help and receive help.
Right.
And focusing on sustainability, not just making money. And it's interesting how she's using her content, to get data and raise awareness and build her brand.
Yeah, it's strategic.
And then she teases some upcoming stuff like the Tyrese movie 1992 and his new album Beautiful Pain.
Yeah, keeping people interested.
Okay, so let's switch gears and talk about that episode with Supernatural Naya. Sippin' Tea with Supernatural Naya.
Yeah.
This is a great example of how she brings in experts to talk about things she's passionate about,
Right.
Like holistic wellness.
Exactly. And she starts off talking about her year of intention and focusing on the wellness cycle.
Yeah.
And her own experience with lupus seems to be a big reason why she's so into well-being.
Right.
It's personal for her.
And she talks about how much she loves tea.
Yeah. But she's also careful to tell people to do their research before trying herbal teas.
Right.
Which makes sense.
Yeah. And then she introduces Naya, who's an herbalist, and she has her own tea company.
Right.
It's so interesting to hear about how Naya grew up around herbalism.
Yeah, and her views on pharmaceuticals versus natural remedies.
Right.
She even mentions that her go-to suggestions are usually tea and ashwagandha, which is so different from Meesh's background, which was more conventional medicine.
Yeah, it's a cool contrast.
It is.
And then they do this tea tasting,
Yeah.
which is really fun to listen to.
I love that part.
Nia brings 2 teas, a hibiscus blend called Hip Hop,
Right.
and a white tea with lavender called Lavish Life.
Such creative names.
And Meesh makes a point of trying them plain first.
Yeah, to see how her body reacts.
Which is so smart.
It is.
And then they talk about adding honey and mint and how loose leaf hibiscus tastes so much better than the bagged kind.
Right.
They even talk about those triangle tea bags
Yeah.
that are supposed to be better for infusion.
It's like they really get into the details of tea.
They do.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how they talk about how people's preferences have changed over time and how some people even eat the tea leaves.
Which is not for everyone.
Right.
Especially with strong herbs.
So they talk about lavish life, which is the white tea with lavender, and hip hop, which is hibiscus,
Right.
and how white tea actually has more antioxidants than green or black tea because of when it's harvested.
Yeah.
And you can tell how much Naya's upbringing has influenced her own health.
Definitely. And her confidence when she talks about herbs,
Right.
it comes from experience, not just book knowledge.
And her mom had this interesting approach.
Yeah.
Kind of like a mix of tea and conventional medicine.
Like whatever works.
Right. And Naya talks about how she got into researching herbs on her own.
Wow.
And she became the go-to person for natural remedies among her friends and family. And she even took an herbalist class with Gaia.
Yeah, where they focused on connecting with each herb.
Right.
Like through meditation, using all your senses.
And she gives this advice about avoiding blends when you're trying to heal something specific.
Right.
So you know which herb is actually working.
Makes sense.
And it's cool how Meesh's family is now asking her for advice on natural remedies. And she's thinking about getting certified in herbalism.
That's like it's spreading.
Yeah. And then Naya gives all these specific tea recommendations
Yes.
for different issues like sleep problems and bloating and headaches and anxiety and poor circulation.
And she has these fun names for all her blends like Chillax and Roy B.O.
And pep in your step.
And I like Roses. I love that she uses music-inspired names.
Me too. And she mentions where people can buy her teas.
Yeah, locally at Qualm Cultivation in Las Vegas.
Right.
And online at supernaturalenia.com.
So helpful.
And her reason for starting her business is really interesting.
Uh-huh.
She talks about the scamdemic and wanting to empower people to take care of their own health.
It's like a mission for her.
It seems like it. And she makes a good point about tea being like a good starting point for wellness.
Yeah.
You know, like peppermint tea is easy to find and it has so many benefits.
Right. And it's easy to grow, too.
That's a good tip.
I thought so.
Yeah.
And then she explains the meaning behind supernatural Nia.
Yeah, connecting it to the fifth principle of Kwanzaa, which is purpose.
And how she's supernatural on purpose.
I love that.
Me too. And they talk about, balancing healthy habits with being human.
Yeah, like giving yourself grace.
It's not about being perfect all the time.
And Naya's honest about the challenges of starting a business, especially while doing other things.
And she talks about what makes supernatural Naya different.
Yeah, ethically sourced, organic loose-leaf herbs from all over the world.
Except for the peppermint, which comes from Washington.
Right.
She really cares about where her ingredients come from.
Yeah. And Meesh even comments on how nice the packaging is.
And then they do that fun game with the tea names and matching songs.
Hey.
And they talk about doing a live tea tasting for their viewers.
Which would be so cool.
And Meesh even mentions that she started taking digestive enzymes because of Naya's suggestion.
Yeah.
And she's already seeing results.
Okay, so for the last video, we've got turning up your peace and living life to the fullest.
The title itself is like a whole vibe.
Right.
It's all about finding that inner peace.
Yeah. And then using that to like level up your life.
Exactly. And of course, they have their drink of the episode.
Of course.
This one's called Zen Glow.
Okay.
It's chamomile tea, hibiscus, orange juice, vanilla extract, honey, and cinnamon.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
And she breaks down what each ingredient does.
Yeah.
Like how chamomile is good for stress, and hibiscus is full of antioxidants, and orange juice has vitamin C.
It's like a recipe for relaxation.
It really is.
Yeah.
And she doesn't just tell you the ingredients, she explains how to make it.
Right.
And even talks about how pretty it looks.
So you're engaging all the senses.
Yeah. And then she gets into the main topic.
Yeah.
How do you cultivate inner peace when you've got all this stuff going on in your life?
Like the podcast itself.
Right.
All the networking and recording and scheduling.
And she's honest about how she sometimes wonders if she's doing things right.
Yeah.
But she finds balance in the fact that she loves what she's doing.
That's so important.
It is. And she shares some practical tips for finding inner peace, like meditation, prayer, and leaning on your community.
Right.
And she talks about this time when she was exhausted from editing. But she just shifted her mindset and pushed through it.
The power of positive self-talk.
Yeah. And she talks about knowing who you can turn to for support when things get tough.
Right.
Which is a good reminder for everyone. And then she brings up nostalgia.
Yeah.
And how important it is for feeling safe and comforted.
Especially when you've been through trauma.
Right. And she gives examples like certain snacks or songs or smells.
Yeah.
And she talks about how gardenia and jasmine remind her of her grandmother. And then she asks the listeners to share their own childhood memories and what smells and things take them back.
It's a good way to connect with the audience.
It is. And she emphasizes how important community is.
Yeah, both your close friends and family.
Right.
And the wider community of listeners.
And she thanks everyone for the comments and shares and views.
Yep.
It's like she really values that feedback. And then there's this whole part about random acts of kindness.
Yeah.
And how much of an impact they can have. She even tells a story about Dutch Bros and a pay it forward moment.
Yeah.
And she wants to start something smaller with her own listeners.
I love that idea.
And then she moves into talking about music.
Yes.
And how it can help you recenter and ground yourself and even elevate your mood. She gives examples of motivational music like Nipsey Hussle.
Yeah.
And music that helps you release emotions like Erykah Badu's Bag Lady.
It's like music can be therapy.
It really can.
Huh.
And she asks her listeners what songs they listen to for different moods.
Right.
Which is another way to get them involved.
And then she talks about creating a sweet life playlist.
Yes.
For different moods.
And she encourages her listeners to do the same.
And even create a collaborative playlist on Spotify.
That's so cool.
It is. And she even shares her own examples for different times of day and different feelings.
Yeah, like Kirk Franklin for the morning and Music Soul Child for love.
And YG for fun.
And Tamia for your mom.
I love that.
And then she brings it back to mental well-being.
Yeah.
And her year of intention.
And how important it is to take care of your mind and body.
And she shares her morning routine.
Yeah.
How she writes down her tasks and prays and sets intentions for peace for herself and her loved ones.
Look at a little blueprint for a positive day.
It is.
Yeah.
And even though she admits she's not always consistent with affirmations, she knows how powerful they can be.
Right.
And she talks about avoiding negative self-talk.
Such a key part of mental health.
And she encourages her listeners to actually write down and use affirmations.
Yeah.
So it's not just an abstract idea. And she talks about creating positive spaces, like having a prayer closet or a reading nook, or using things like mood lighting and candles and incense.
And air purifiers with essential oils.
It's all about setting the mood.
And she even have a pre-recording ritual.
Yeah, she listens to Glorilla.
It's like she knows how to get herself in the right headspace.
Yeah. And her main point is that you have to prioritize the things that help you feel centered.
And she talks about how certain scents can boost your mood.
Like vanilla and fruity scents.
Yeah.
And she asks her listeners what their ideal podcast space would look like.
Which is fun.
Yeah. And she reminds everyone about the collaborative playlist on Spotify.
Right.
And then she wraps up with these really powerful reminders.
Yeah.
Find serenity, create a sacred space, keep growing, use music as therapy, slow down, put your phone down.
It's like a whole manifesto for a good life.
It really is. And she talks about how some of her past aspirations, like wanting to have a clothing line, are actually relevant to what she's doing now.
Like it all came full circle.
And she talks about how serious these times are and how important it is to be intentional and make changes, and how even small things like getting sunlight can make a difference.
Right.
And she ends by saying, peace isn't something you wait for, it's something you create. And she encourages her listeners to be intentional and protect their energy and make time for joy.
Yeah, and to incorporate things they enjoyed as kids.
It's like she's giving everyone a little toolkit for a better life.
Okay, so let's wrap things up by looking at the Spill It With Meesh platform as a whole.
All right.
You know, from Spotify and her Linktree.
Yeah.
It's clear that she has a really specific mission.
Her tagline says it all. Empowering urban communities through real, unfiltered conversations that foster growth, healing, and connection.
It's like she sums up the whole thing in one sentence.
She does. And on Spotify, she talks about creating a space for diverse voices and sharing stories and insights about health and relationships and being an entrepreneur. And her goal is to inspire people to level up while staying true to their roots.
Which is so important.
It is. And she's on all these different platforms.
Yeah.
Spotify, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube.
And she makes it easy to find her.
Yeah, she provides all the links and handles.
So you can connect with her wherever you prefer.
So I guess the big takeaway is that Still It With Meesh is this really dynamic and multifaceted platform.
Yeah.
And it's all driven by her passion for personal growth and community and honest conversation.
And she mixes her own personal experiences with interviews from experts like Supernatural Nia.
Right.
And all sorts of interesting content.
And she's reaching a diverse audience who are looking for inspiration and guidance.
Yeah, whether it's about mental health or entrepreneurship or just living a better life.
What I find really interesting is how she combines that realness and vulnerability with practical advice.
Like the tea recommendations or the playlist ideas.
And she's always encouraging her listeners to participate.
It's more than just a podcast or a video series.
Right.
It's like a whole movement.
Yeah.
Focus on connecting with people and growing together.
So if you're interested in learning more about mental health or entrepreneurship or holistic wellness from a real and relatable perspective, definitely check out Spill It With Meesh on Spotify or YouTube.
And her social media is a good way to connect with her community.
So as we wrap things up, we want to leave you with a question.
Yeah.
How are you creating safe spaces in your own life?
Both for yourself and for the people around you.
Could you maybe incorporate some of that intentionality and community focus that Meesh seems to have mastered?
Something to think about.